Yo, what's good, everybody? It's your boy, The Clinician, and I am back at it again. We are on Comics and Coffee, where we just talk some comic books, man, and just shoot the breeze. And I already had my cup of joe for today. I promise you, the next time I will have my coffee with me, man. I just actually had to. I couldn't wait. I had to get that drink in. So, for those of y'all who are seeing this, happy Memorial Day. And I hope all is well. Hope you guys are enjoying your, day off. If you do have the day off, hope you guys are having a great barbecue, spending time with your family and your folks. And salute to our veterans out there, for keeping us safe and, all that good stuff. So with that being said, today what I want to talk about, it's been a long time coming. I've been gritting my teeth, biting my tongue, holding back for this particular moment. And what I would love to discuss today, and what I really am excited about discussing today, is X-Men 97. Oh yes, we are finally going to do a review on the first season of X-Men 97 by Beau DeMayo. We're going to get into it. We're going to talk about what I like, what I didn't like, my personal, views on where I feel the series is going to go from here, how I feel about the characters, the storyline, the art, all of that great stuff. We're going to get into it today. We're going to talk about it. Guys, this will be a spoiler review. So if you guys have not seen X-Men 97 and you are true X-Men fans, first off, I don't know what you're doing here. Pause the tape, watch the show, come right back. Because I promise you, this is a show that is definitely worth watching. And if you are a true comic book fan of X-Men and you are a fan of the X-Men, you will love this show. I'm just going to get that out of the way now. Yes, I had a couple of gripes, but overall, I love this show. I'm just going to put that out there now. Now, with that being said, let's get into it. So, let's go back a little bit. Let's go back about 2 years ago, if I remember correctly, is when Disney first announced that they were working on a continuation of the critically acclaimed 90s X-Men cartoon series that used to air on Fox Kids. So for those of you guys who didn't grow up in that era, I did. I remember that show. And maybe one day we'll have to do a review on that particular show. And guys, for those of you guys who would love to see me do an interview on X-Men, the original 90s animated series, comment on the comment section down below. And also click and subscribe if you aren't subscribed to this channel. What are you doing? Subscribe to your boy. Help a brother out. Come on. Giving you guys some gems here. Like and subscribe. But with that being said, the 90s series, great show. Really the cartoon that got me into comic books. Before that, I was, I think I was like 6 or 7 when the show first aired on Fox Kids. And back in 92, if I'm not mistaken, that was the show that got me into comics. I used to love watching the show every Saturday morning. Me and my pops would wake up, watch it. Really the only thing that got me out of doing like an intensive workout that morning. Because my dad had me really into sports during that time. So I remember having to get up mad early. He had me running stadiums. But he would make time to watch that X-Men show with me. I think the show was so good because it had a lot of adult themes in it. And it was really ahead of its time when we're talking about the things that it really explored. And a lot of things I didn't get as a kid that I rewatched the show in my later years as an adult and realized, whoa, it was really dope. And really that first episode, I think, really set the tone for that series because, of course, one of the characters gets killed off in that particular, those first 2 episodes. And you were just like, whoa, this is getting real, right? Like, it's really that type of series. But nonetheless, that series was a great show. I loved it. I love the cameos, love the tie-ins. There was a connection with the 90s Spider-Man, which I really hope we get with the success of this particular X-Men season, I'm hoping that we get like a 90s Spider-Man. Oh my God, that is my definitive Spider-Man growing up. Nobody can tell me different. I know there's been a lot of other Spider-Man cartoons out since then. Some say that they've surpassed that '90s Spider-Man cartoon. To me is like on par with that '90s X-Men. I love them both the same. But nonetheless, as all good things must come to end. That last season, just I guess I don't know if Marvel was having issues during this time, because I know during this time they had sold a lot of their rights, but or maybe they were having some budgeting issues. I don't know what was going on Fox, but that last season it really didn't do the show justice to me. I mean, of course, when you're growing up, you really don't think about these things, and I was just enjoying the show, but even then, I kind of noticed that there was like a decline in the way the series was written. It wasn't as seamless as I felt like the earlier seasons were. That last season, the animation style wasn't really that good. I think it was season 5. It just wasn't that good. Like the animation really declined. Like the shadings and all the dark details that they would do with the characters just didn't seem to be there. And I mean, it was just like, what are they doing? But I mean, it was the last season. They got to the finish line. And that last episode at the end, it definitely, I felt tied up a lot. But I still feel like there was something missing. It just felt like, I really would like them to finish this out. And, we never got that, just growing up. So fast forward, 2 years ago, Bo DeMayo, shout out to that brother, man, pitched the idea to Disney to, during COVID to basically rewrite and really continue the series. And I mean, when I heard it, you have to understand the context of this time, and really even today, Disney has been on a really steep decline, like with their products as it relates to Marvel. Ever since really the Infinity Endgame, I feel like it's just gone downhill. We've had a couple of pockets where, oh man, this is actually kind of dope. From the Spider-Man, movie they came out with recently. Not recently, but that last Spider-Man that came out was really good. I actually liked Shang-Chi. I thought that was cool. And I guess my opinion is unpopular, but I did like the Moon Knight series they came out with. I actually thought that was actually done well, but to a lot of people, just to keep it a beam, I've never really read a lot of the Moon Knight comics. I've always seen him in a lot of tie-ins. I got the gist of his character, but not really the lure of everything that was going on. So I think a lot of people who really are hardcore Moon Knight fans didn't really resonate with them. And I totally get it, because I feel that way about Thor. I just feel like the last Thor movies have not been really good at all. And that goes back to my point, the decline of Disney. I just felt none of the movies really have the same impact or the same weight as those earlier, movies did. And, that same lure and that magic that was there, it just feels like it's just kind of faded out. And I mean, I don't know. It just feels like the movies are just missing something from the fight choreography. I mean, the Russo brothers just handled it so well. So with all that being said, taking all that into context, when we're looking at the decline of Marvel as a brand, and with a couple of like highs and and sprinkled in here and there, I really was cautiously optimistic about this X-Men 97. The kid in me wanted it. I'm rooting for it because I wanted to do well. And I'm like, man, this is my childhood here. This is the series that got me into comic books. If there was no X-Men 90 series, don't know if I'll be reading comics to this day. It really means that much to me. So to hear that announcement, I was just really anticipating it. And I feel like it got pushed back, because I think initially it was supposed to come out, I think like a year ago, if I'm not mistaken, because they had actually released like the action figures, like the Marvel Legends toys that coincide with the series. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I feel like it was supposed to come out last year. And they came out with the toys to go with the series, and the series was a no-show, so it was kind of like, okay. So that was also concerning, that the fact that the steady decline of Disney, the series getting pushed back. Then we hear like that the writer of the series is having issues with Disney. And I was like, oh boy, this isn't looking too good. And then he ends up getting like fired Well, I don't know. Let me correct myself. I don't know if he got fired or if they parted ways due to creative differences, but from what I've read and based off of what I've researched, it seems like something was off. And it seemed like it was more, to me, from my perspective, looks like Disney was not liking how Bo DeMayo was, I guess, running the show. I don't know if it was, creative differences. I don't know if it was maybe how he approached other staff. I don't know if he was too difficult. I don't know. I honestly don't. Me personally, as long as the final product looks is great and performs well, if we're just talking about him being a hard ass on his employees so he can produce the better product, I'm all for it, man, because look what you get at the end of the day. Now, if he did some illegal, shady stuff, that's on a whole nother, that's something else. But aside from that, if he ain't do none of that, get that brother his job back, man, for real. Like, that brother, you can tell from his writing that he was a huge X-Men fan. We're going to get into that. But before the show started, keeping it context, I'm very nervous because they fired a writer. Disney has been in a decline. They pushed the show back. You're not really hearing too much about the show. I mean, you're hearing articles here and there on it. It was really very quiet. And I'm just like, man, I don't know. I don't know if the show is really going to perform well. I'm just very nervous. Then you're getting articles about them possibly switching up the characters. Like nothing wrong with, LGBTQ or, binary or what have you, but, they're switching up the characters, making more binary, which, okay, that's cool. But now he might be in a relationship with Wolverine, which that never happened in the comics. And I don't know. I don't know. Like, there's a lot of different shifts. And my biggest thing was, regardless of whether you switch up the characters or not, because again, I have no problem with LGBTQ community or any of those type of changes. My biggest concern is that are you going to tell me a good story? Are you shifting these characters just to shift them or just to appease, a certain demographic? Or are you actually doing it for the betterment of the story? At the end of the day, whether you make the character black, brown, green, non-binary, binary, gay, whatever, as long as you're telling me a good story, I really don't care. That's my biggest thing with Disney and really just stories in general. Tell me a good story. Does it make sense? Can you see this character actually doing this? Does it make sense for the plot? And if it does, I'm all for it, at the end of the day. So my biggest concern was them shifting the plots around, changing up the characters. I'm just really unsure at this point. So I'm like, man, so I was talking to my fiance and we were getting something to eat one day. She was taking me out for my birthday. And we went to this like little Asian spot. You know what I'm saying? We stay in, close to Atlanta. So we went to the spot in Sandy Springs. She, gave me a really great birthday dinner, was really enjoying it. And on our way there, I noticed I was like, I got like, noticed like the preview. Finally got the preview. And this is back in February of this year. Finally got the preview of the X-Men 97 cartoon. And I was just like, okay, here we go. I'm looking at the animation because I've seen pictures of the animation. And I'm going to be honest, I wasn't feeling it. When I first saw the animation, I was like, I don't know. Something just seems kind of off. I don't know if it was it looked kind of kiddie, honestly. It looked like they kind of Disneyed up the animation, if that makes sense, to make it look. It didn't look as serious in tone when I first saw it. It just looked kind of off. The characters definitely don't look exactly how they looked back in the 90s. So I was just kind of like, which I'm not expecting it to. I do understand there's going to be updates. There's going to be modifications. But it just seemed kind of off to me. I don't know. Did it seem off to you guys? Like, for like looking at the X-Men 90s like show, right? And then looking at the show now, did the animations, like in terms of like the archetypes, like the character designs, right? Like, did it look kind of off-putting to you when you were looking at kind of the promo pics at first? Let me know in the comment section, because it kind of did to me at first. But when I saw the previews, I was like, okay. So when I watched the previews and they're showing it, and I'm like, okay, I like how they bled into it. They showed like the old school 90s TV, very retro with the static. I'm like, okay, so they're continuing. They are going to continue and pick up where the 90s series left off at. So I'm like, okay, they're not just retconning the whole series and just kind of starting it as if it started in the 90s, like from scratch. They are continuing the series. I'm like, okay, cool. So when I'm watching it, I'm like, oh, okay. So the tone seemed very dark. It seemed very serious. And I'm like, I like that. So it fell off rip that this was going to be a show that was really catered to people like me who grew up in that time period. So it seemed like it was more catered to, really adults, more so than children, to be honest with you. So looking at it, I was like, whoa. And then, of course, everybody saw the scene, the scene when Wolverine pulls out the claws and Gambit's on top of him and he charges up his claws, which he never does that in the comics. But I didn't even really care because that was such a badass scene. I was like, it makes no sense comic-wise, but for that show and all intents and purposes, that was a badass scene. I ain't even gonna hold you. So when I saw that, me and my fiance was like, oh, this is about to be lit. Okay, we were kind of hyped for that. We was like, oh, we watched that preview, I think, about 3 or 4 times. I ain't even gonna lie, because we were sitting there right before we went in for my birthday dinner. We watched that preview about 3 or 4 times. I was like, oh, that's lit. That's lit. Okay. So I was a little bit more optimistic. The animation was still kind of but I was like, okay, I'm kind of warming up to it. Let's see how the show actually plays out. All right. So we finally get our announcement. The show's going to start in, March, I think, and then pretty much had a whole layout of the episodes. And the fact that they weren't going to release all of it at once, which to me, I'm going to give Disney their respect on that. That was a smart play because it was such a good show. But Disney, moving forward, just go ahead and give us the whole series, y'all. Like, don't drag that out. Please don't drag that out like next season. Just give us the series. Y'all already got it read out. Just give us the series, y'all. Like, I don't want to wait a week for this show. But it was smart because it got people talking. It really did. It really got people talking. I mean, I know in my communities we was lit. Like my IG was lit. We was talking every week. I'm calling me and the homies. It was like back in the day when you was watching X-Men and you saw a dope episode, like especially like the Phoenix Saga, and you calling your boy, yo, did you see that episode of X-Men? Yo, that thing was lit. We called on the telephone too. That episode of X-Men was lit, bro. Like, it was like that. It was like that. We ain't say lit back in the day. We was like, that episode of X-Men was dope, man. That thing was tight. I ain't gonna hold you. Like, man, Wolverine was, I don't know what's gonna happen on the next episode. We up here speculating what could go on. So it kind of brought that nostalgia back, right? But just give us the episodes next time, because that wait, it was too dragged out for me. Anyway, getting back to the show. So, the build-up. The build-up is there. You gave a solid preview. Still kind of nervous about Bo DeMayo presence not being there, but we do find out that he did write the first 2 seasons, which, okay, let's see how it plays out. Because, at this time, not knowing what he's capable of. So, I'm still not familiar with Bo DeMayo or what he's doing. Just know that, okay, he's passionate about X-Men. The preview looks solid, and I'm ready to go. I'm all in at this point. So, me and the fiance, we kick it in. That first episode. Yo, that first episode, that is how you do a first episode. I'm talking about, I was hooked in from the rip. Like how they came in with it, with the Sentinels, and they kind of did some callbacks with the Night of the Sentinels with Jubilee, but they switched it up with Sunspot instead. Yo! And man, when the Sentinels was coming for Sunspot and Storm, like, first off, Cyclops was doing this thing. They made Cyclops They did that man justice. I'm not even a Cyclops fan like that, but how Fox has been doing Cyclops since these live action movies, they been doing that man dirty. They got him looking like a punk next to Wolverine. Hugh Jackman was sunning that Cyclops. I forgot dude's name was playing him. No disrespect, but that Cyclops was not the Cyclops I grew up with back in the 90s. That Cyclops, he will fight Wolverine. He was no punk. He had Gene, I got this on lock. I'm the leader of the X. I run this ish right here. That Cyclops, they brought that Cyclops back. I was like, let's go. Let's go. So this Cyclops comes in, saves Sunspot, doing this stuff, taking out Sentinels with his optic beams, concussive blast, whatever you want to call them. And my girl, Aurora Monroe, a.k.a. Storm, comes in. Yo, let me tell y'all something. Storm has some of the most badass moments in the series. Hands down. I mean, her and Cyclops was like, Nick, I don't know, because both of them had some badass moments, y'all. I ain't gonna hold you. Everybody had their chance to shine and get off, but them two right there, Storm will show you how OP she really is. She came in that joint and just shut it down. Anytime Storm, she like the secret weapon. She a cheat code. Anytime you need something to get done, yo, give him the forecast. Give him the forecast. And I'm gonna get to that part, because that's the line. That's still the coldest line in the series to me. That's still the coldest line in the series to me. So we get Sunspot. We save Sunspot. The X-Men save Sunspot. They, try to get him to join the X-Men. He's kind of a kid trying to figure it out. Power is just developing. Has the power, of the sun somewhat, to an extent. I'm going to simplify it. Cool character. I'm liking that. So I like the callback. We get the tour of the X-Mansion. We get to see the characters. Everybody's back. I love how, for the most part, most of the voice actors, with the exception of, I believe Gambit's voice actor didn't come back for whatever reason. I don't know why. But the guy that took Gambit's place was cool. I like the dude that took Gambit. He sounded almost like the guy from back in the day. Shout out to him. I'm not really good with the voice actors and actresses' names, so please forgive me. But I really did like the voices, that they still got it. You could tell like there was a little rust there. Like I think the guy that does Wolverine's voice, like you could tell it doesn't sound as raspy or as gruff as it did back in the 90s, but you can hear it in pockets. You can hear him getting it back in pockets, and he still was dope. Don't get me wrong. That to me is my definitive Wolverine. I know a lot of people like Stephen Bloom, who's my favorite voice actor, but I do like that 90s Wolverine. So don't misconstrue that I had an issue with it. I think dude they still brought it. Of course, Rogue brought it. She's iconic. Every time I read Rogue's voice, like read Rogue in comics, that's the voice I hear. You know what I'm saying? Like that's my Rogue. And then with Beast, I love the quotables. Still has that wit, those one-liners that he does when he's quoting somebody or quoting the author, quoting a poet, whatever. I always love that about Beast, man. Hank McCoy, love that character, love how they did him. Morph was a switch up. They gave him more of the look of Changeling from the comics, because Morph is actually not a comic book character. He originated on TV, on the cartoon. He was a character created for TV. So that was pretty cool to see they kind of integrated the Changeling look. Because I was like, what are they doing to Morph? But when I did some digging, I'm like, oh, they gave him the Changeling look. Okay, got it. Wasn't mad at it. Cool. Like dude did Morph's voice. Cool. No problems. Jubilee. I like, they switched Jubilee's voice actress up. I think she ended up taking over, I don't know if she did Jean or another character, but she ended up allowing another actress, an Asian actress, to take Jubilee's voice, which to me, I couldn't tell a difference. I think the girl that did Jubilee's voice did an awesome job. No problems there. The voice acting to me was still on point. I had no problems with it overall. I thought everybody brought it. You could tell everybody was really happy to be back there. And I felt like they were in the studio with each other. I don't know if they were or weren't, but it did feel like that chemistry was still there. I did like that. So that was cool. So going back to the episode itself, though, we're dealing with Trask and his Sentinels, and they're they're doing what they do, trying to bring them back, and we get to the my favorite scene, because we've introduced Sunspot, we get to meet the X-Men, everybody's back. Of course, Gambit wearing he got the 90s fit on with the half-cut shirt, with the rocker, the rocker thing, the grunge look. I was like, that's straight up 90s, man. I was like laughing. It was so funny. Or he's making beignets and stuff. Like, I was like, oh man. And my fiance from New Orleans, so she's like, that's so New Orleans. Like, she was okay. She see what you're doing there. But it was cool just to see them just interact, just have those normal interactions. So when we get to the Sentinels at the end, that final battle, and we're flying the Blackbird or the X-Jet, and it gets shot down by the Sentinels, and we're jumping out, and Cyclops. This is what and y'all know the moment. Y'all know the moment I'm about to talk about. He was like, all right, X-Men, see you on the ground. He was like, everybody, getting some help, because, not everybody can fly, because, not everybody can fly, like, so the flyers are out there. You got Rogue, you got, who else can fly? You got Jean, who can, levitate, she's floating down and everything with her thing. Everybody's just, what else was she? Yeah, Jean, everybody was out there, and, everybody's falling down and getting help with their flight. Oh, Morph turns into, I think, Angel, and he's helping somebody, but no one's helping Cyclops. And I'm like, who in the hell gonna help Cyclops out? Like, everybody getting some help, except, and I think, correction, I think Jean was still at the X. She won't fight. She was back at the X mission. My fault. But everybody else is like getting help, with somebody, helping them to fly and all this other stuff. Cyclops said, I don't need no help. I got this. I'm Scott Summers, dang it. I'm gonna show y'all how we do it. This man unload that Optiblast, boom, shut that thing down. That concussive blast, and it just buffered his fall. I was like, oh, that's what we doing. That's what we doing, okay? I see you out there. Cyclops, okay? I see you, Cyc. So, and he gets down. To me, my X-Men. Man! And all the jokers come in the back. I'm like, oh, that was so gangster. That was so gangster. I was like, oh, stop. That was so gangster. I was like, oh, God. Oh, man. I was like, okay, we in for a ride now. We in for a ride. By this point, me and my feet, I'm hyped. I'm like, let's go. Then we get to the scene where they fight the Sentinels. They start playing the X-Men. Oh, that X-Men theme, so I was worried about that. Let me tell y'all about that. Now, y'all know, anybody that know anything about that X-Men cartoon, if y'all know nothing else, they had no business, and I'm going to tell y'all, no dang business going that dang hard on the dang theme song. That theme song is too hard. That theme song is too dang hard, and it is iconic to this day. That theme song is, man, you don't skip that theme song. When that theme song comes, you don't skip that. You let that thing ride. When that thing come on, you don't skip that. You let that ride. That's how you got to do. You got to let that ride. So when that theme song came on, I was like, and they didn't switch it up too much. I mean, they did a little, they didn't switch it up too much. So I was like, okay. We're keeping it the same. All right, we keeping it mostly the same. All right, I'm with that. But then they play it again when they start fighting the Sentinels, and then they kind of pull on the nostalgic strings a little bit, because the one scene where Rogue is fighting the Sentinel, and then she flips it over because it tries to grab her with its tentacles, and it gets her on the wrist, and she flies up, flips over, and throws it down. That was from the OG X-Men 90 animated series theme song. She does that same flip. So that was a callback. I don't know if y'all picked up on that or not. And so we start playing that music, so it's getting real. Cyclops blasting the Sentinels and just doing his stuff. Gambit's, throwing the cars out. That's my favorite character. Remy LeBeau, that dude. He was like, I got this. And he throwing the cars out. But my man Beast, my man Beast, he came in hard, bro. He was like, yo, I got this. He's like, he actually got into a Sentinel and made it a mech suit. I was like, let's go. This man got in the mech, he was piloting like a mech suit, just boo, 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 just beat. I was like, yo, Beast killing it. Man, shoot. And then Wolverine, he got to get his licks in, but man, when it won't looking too good, and the Sentinel start, them things is big. And they was like, all right, we started to become on the defensive. What's that line I said before? What is that line I said before? This man Cyclops said he hit that button. He like, okay, y'all want to play like that? Y'all want to try to overcrowd a brother? I got this. And Master Mold, he's sitting there, because Master Mold is out there running the Sentinel fleet. My man Cyclops come in. Give him the forecast. Man. Yo, when you see that sky turning gray and that lightning coming down, I was like, oh, is she coming? Yo, Storm came in that Joe lit like, man, y'all ain't know y'all messing with right now. Y'all ain't know. She came in there just boom. All the wind, light, all that Joe, gone. Just go. I'm like, God dang, Storm too damn OP. She too damn OP. Y'all put some respect on that. And that was one of the things my fiance kind of pointed out too, man. They're like, they don't realize how strong Storm is. Like, and I was like, you so right. You so right. And I mean, now she getting her due in these newer comic books, with the how they doing her. I'm loving how the newer X-Men comic books have been doing Storm as a lady. They really showing like Storm is nothing to be trifled with. Now, even in the cartoon, Storm was always a problem, but I never felt like they really utilized her in the way just that one scene. And then when the Sentinel goes, Omega level threat, that's all you needed to know. Because she is an Omega level threat. And for those of you guys who don't know, X-Men, when we're talking about mutants, there's different classes. There's different levels to this. So you have beta level mutants, which are kind of like just your typical mutants. They're really not that much of a threat. An example of that would be somebody like a Toad. They're not weak per se. They have abilities, and when used properly, they can be very effective. But they're just not on that. They're not like a global level threat. They're not gonna take over the universe. Toad's not gonna take over the universe. He's just not. Then you have alpha level threats, which vary. There's different levels even within that category, but somebody like a Cyclops, or a Gambit, or maybe like a Bishop, somebody like that who's pretty strong and very capable and can do a lot of damage. They can't be a problem. But they're not, again, like, they're not going to conquer the world. They're not going to just, they're not like a R&B level threat where they're just going to they can take on all comers by themselves. Cyclops is not taking on like a whole, R&B by himself. Okay? So, from there, you have Omega level threats, which are mutant abilities that their limits really haven't reached their zenith. Like a Magneto, or a Storm, or a Jean Grey, or a Professor Xavier. Their power knows really no limits. Like, you've never seen the full max of it, right? But they can do a lot. They're a global level threat. They can really really mess up like the Earth, the planet. They can really do some damage. And going back to my man, shout out to Comics Explain, he always goes beyond the mega level when you're talking about like reality warpers, like Molecule Man, Owen Reese, or Franklin Richards, or Onslaught, things like that. Characters like that are just like straight up they're a universal threat. You're just not messing with them. So the fact that the Sentinel gave that nod, Omega level threat detected, when Storm comes, I was just like, yeah, she that chick. So she took out all the Sentinels. I was just like, oh man. And I was just like, man, this is so dope. This is so lit. So then, of course, we get the famous scene on the previews where Master Mode is up there, and we get Wolverine, you know, popping out his claws, Gambit jumping on top of him, charging his claws up, which never happens in the comics, but I loved it anyway. I don't care. And then Morph turns into the Blob, so Wolverine can jump on him as a platform and freaking, just destroy Master Mold, what's left of him. And shout out shout out to Bo DeMayo's ingenious idea of using Morph as a mutant cameo. If you want a cameo, Morph is your guy. And we get so many great cameos from Morph. Like from Blob to Psylocke to Hulk. He turns into Hulk at one point. Like, man, Morph gives you so many cameos, yo. So shout out. That was an ingenious idea for characters that may not be in season 1 for him to turn into. I just thought that was really smart. Very well played. Love what they did with Morph and giving him being a mutant cameo. Keep that same energy with season 2 because I love that. So, getting back after a successful scrap with the Sentinels, they've been reprimanded for the time being. We go back to the X-Mansion. And who do we find at the X-Mansion? Okay, so we're going to rewind. Well, no, let's keep going. We find the X-Mansion Magneto. And what is Magneto doing there? He's holding the last will and testament of Professor Charles Xavier. Now, at this point, I left out something. If you watch the last episode of the original X-Men 90s series, Professor Xavier was severely injured or wounded. I think he was was he shot? I think it was shot or something. I have to go. I haven't seen that episode in a long time, but he was shot. He was really badly injured, where he wasn't gonna make it if he stayed on Earth, and his injuries were so severe that he needed some. Basically, it took Shi'ar technology to sustain and keep him alive. So essentially, the series ends with Professor Xavier leaving the planet with the Shi'ar Empress by the name of Lilandra. Now, who are the Shi'ar Empire? Well, we'll find more. Basically, if you watch the old cartoons or if you read the old comics, the Shi'ar Empire is made up of a ragtag of different alien species that have come together as a conglomerate to keep balance in the universe. They're fueled by the M'Kraan crystal. Without going into too much about what that is, it's it's a cheat code that provides a lot of power, and they're also tied into they're hugely and heavily involved in the Phoenix saga. As they worship the Phoenix and thought it was going to revive everything in the universe because that's what it pretty much represents. And the love interest within that particular core is there's a love interest between Lilandra and Professor Xavier. So she comes back to the planet knowing that Professor Xavier, because they have like a psychic connection, knowing that he's not doing too well, and she offers to take him from the planet to heal him, because if he stays on Earth, he's not gonna make it. So Professor Xavier gives a tearful farewell to each of his mutants and each of his students, and just leaves them there and doesn't come back, basically. So basically, he leaves them there to figure it out. But meanwhile, people on Earth actually thinks he's dead. So no one ever explained out. So no one outside of the X-Men knew what really happened to Magneto knew what happened to Professor Xavier once him actually just leaving Earth. He's not dead, but they faked his death as if he had died. He became somewhat of a martyr. Now, what does Magneto have to do with this? Magneto, during that time, if you remember on the last episode, was actually going to lead a whole coup against, humans and the government because he was tired of how mutants were being treated. And he was at his point where he was staging a war. But when he found out that Professor Xavier wasn't doing well, he came to see how he was doing and ultimately just gave up on his pursuit for battle at that time, based off of in honor of his friend Professor Xavier. Because as much as they have different views. Professor Xavier and Magneto are really like tight. They're really like brothers, honestly. They're really, really good friends. They just have different viewpoints. But there's always I always like how they played it with their relationship, where there was an understanding that we don't cross certain lines when it comes to each other. And I love their dynamic, and I love their interaction. So Professor Xavier basically left a will, like, if I should pass, and he believed so much in Magneto and what he could be capable, what he could do, and the potential that Magneto had to actually embody Professor Xavier's dream and what they initially had discussed early on. He basically left Magneto the X-Mention and leadership over his students. And that was the last will and testament of Charles Xavier. So when they walk in, after, the whole Sentinel thing, and Magneto was basically in Charles's office, they see that, and he shows them the will, I'm running this now. And I was just like, yo, Magneto is leading the X-Men. Yo, what a way to end a first episode. And what trips me out is each of these episodes is only maybe 23, 25 minutes. I think maybe the longest, they had one episode, I think it was actually almost 30 minutes. But nothing's really, the episodes are short. But they put so much, they cram so much story and so many dynamics into the episode that you're just like, man, it feels like you watch. So much happens in so little time that you're just like, wow, I can't believe that they were able to fit all of this in the runtime. It's beautifully paced, beautifully written. Everything you want in the first episode, I loved it. Now we get into the second episode, which we have Magneto basically, leading the team. Oh, and also we find out too, and I left out a key part, and the reason that Jean wasn't in the first battle is because Jean is pregnant. And that's important. Okay, so we're gonna get to that. When I found out she was pregnant, I was like, that's not Jean. As soon as they showed her with that belly, is she pregnant? I told my friend, I said, that's not Jean. I told my fiance, that is not Jean. Off rip, because I already knew what was coming. So going to the second episode, we find out that Magneto's gonna be leading the X-Men. And it was so funny because they did my man Cyclops dirty on this. I was like, y'all had to do Cyclops like this. So on the theme song, right, they always show Cyclops first because he's the leader of the X-Men. Even in the OG series, even though Professor X is the true leader, the field commander of the X-Men is Cyclops. So he was always shown. Hey guys, we're back. I'm sorry. My video ended up cutting off the storage had gotten a little full, so I had to get rid of some things, to kind of fix that up. So with that being said though, man, they did my man Cyclops so dirty. So on that first theme song, back in the 90s, they used to always show Cyclops first, in the theme song. He was the field commander, he was that dude, he was the leader. Man, was like, I'm the leader now. I'm running this. I got it. So he just comes in, shows Magneto at the beginning. I'm just like, oh, wow. Wow. They low-key did my man dirty on that. So, all right. So, Magneto. This is where it gets interesting because you see a shift and it lets you know already this is going to be a darker tone. And it's going to be a more of an adult theme. And one of the things that, and this kind of gets into one of my slight gripes, but I understood because it is somewhat comic accurate on why they did it. The relationship between Magneto and Rogue. So, what I mean by that is, before Rogue became an X-Men, she was essentially with the Brotherhood. And for those of you guys who don't know, the Brotherhood of Mutants was Magneto's basically team that consisted of, Magneto, Avalanche, Toad, Pyro, Rogue at the time, Mystique, Blob, that whole team, right? So Rogue joined them initially and would later be turned in basically leaving them to join the X-Men. but she started off as with the Brotherhood. So that's why you get the what they call the Outback Rogue suit, where she's wearing the green suit and all that, and she had kind of like that mullet haircut, back in the 80s. Well, this really wasn't. That's one of the things that really wasn't explored in the original 90s cartoon. They never really explored the relationship between Magneto and Rogue and what she used to do, what she used to have with them. Which is interesting because, and in fact, I don't even think they really shared a lot of screen time together in the 90s cartoon. I don't even really think they interacted at all, if any. Maybe wrong on that, but I don't recall them actually interacting in the 90s cartoon. In the comic books, they definitely did. And in fact, during the Age of Apocalypse run, you saw the relationship between like Magneto and Rogue, and of course that classic iconic Savage Land outfit that she wore with him, right? So they started to explore that dynamic in the later episodes of the series. So we're getting into the second and third episode. You're seeing the relationship between Magneto and Rogue, and them sharing that intimacy with each other, and Gambit basically catching them in the act, right? And that was that's kind of the part that I was just kind of like kind of cringing a little bit, because while it is comic accurate that they did have a relationship, how they did my man Gambit was kind of dirty, man. I ain't gonna lie, man. They had my man looking like a punk, like a straight up simp. And what I mean, like, by that, man, he started becoming like the brunt of a lot of jokes. Like, there was one joke where Gambit was looking for Rogue, and like Morph was kind of like, well, she's in the danger room with Magneto right now, like, and he was kind of making some puns on, oh, wonder what they're doing in there, or wonder what the danger is in there, or just kind of making like some slide jokes to my man Gambit, man, like having him look kind of crazy out there in these streets, man. And it's like she was acting all kind of like standoffish with him, and he was still kind of like kind of like how it is when you into somebody and you try, but he's trying to play it cool, but you can he's showing his hand too much. And it just had him looking kind of like, I don't know, man. Like, he was kind of lost out there, man. Like, like, I'm supposed to be, he usually Mr. Suave, cool, you know what I'm saying, chill, play the cut, man. But they got my man Remy LeBeau looking kind of like simpish right now. Oh, man, I'm hating on Rogue. And then, he's kind of going at it with Magneto, getting mad, because he's not liking how, they're starting to have he's still got that relationship or that connection to Rogue and everything. So I don't know, man. It's not so much that it was poorly written, or that's not saying that Gambit can't be jealous, but I don't know, for the type of character, Gambit's always been that real cool, chill guy, like see him, Moshe, eternamo if it need, like, what's up, I'm Gambit, like, he just got that swag to, he's not somebody that usually loses his cool too much. I mean, yeah, every now and again he'll turn up when he's fighting, he's getting ready for a battle, but he's usually like Mr. Cool, Mr. Calm and collected, you know what I'm saying? That's what I always loved about him. But in this case, he's kind of looking like, his girl kind of out there, and she kind of missed her. And then, like, she's not even claiming him. Like, oh, I never said I was your girlfriend. I'm just like, come on, y'all pretty much together, man. Come on, man. How you gonna do my man's like that? You knew you would give it was like, come on now. Come on. You know what I'm saying? So, I don't know, man. She was having my man out there kind of looking crazy. But Magneto was looking like a G. Magneto was just like, hey, I'm running this. He's leading the team and everything. So, kind of moving forward, I'm kind of going to start consolidating these episodes. Cause, I'm not going to do it episode by episode. Just that first episode to me was just such an important episode, because without that, that's the hook. You know what I'm saying? I think that first episode got the most viewership out of all 10 episodes. So that was, shout out for giving a great first episode. That was the hook. The rest of it was just, it was gravy from there. And to me, the first episode was even the best episode. We're going to get into that, but it was a great introduction into the series. So I'm just going to consolidate some things. So I'm going to go by characters and their arcs. So When we're talking about, remember I said earlier with Jean not being Jean, right? When she's pregnant. So that arc early on is like a huge part of the story. So you find out that Jean in the comics, Jean apparently died, after the Dark Phoenix saga, right? She was left for dead after, sacrificing herself, and, she was pretty much killed off. During that point, Cyclops basically kind of goes through a shift in his character. And what I mean by that, he eventually ends up leaving the X-Men and forms his own faction, would later form his own faction, X-Factor, later on down the line. But during his time of leaving the X-Men, he ends up meeting a woman by the name of Madeline Pryor, who looks exactly like Jean and reminded him of Jean. And they end up hooking up, and she ends up getting pregnant. Well, the baby turns out to be Nathaniel Summers, aka Cable. So during this time, you find out that, basically Madeline Pryor is a clone of the actual Jean Grey. And that was kind of the whole point of, the person who created Madeline Pryor to hook up with Cyclops, which you will find out later in the cartoon, of course, to be Mr. Sinister. Now, Mr. Sinister, aka Nathaniel Essex, was a genealogist who basically studied genomes, genes, and really is a psychotic dude when it comes to manipulating a lot of molecules and genes and atoms with mutants. And he always felt he had a very odd and obscure fixation over Cyclops and Jean Grey reproducing. And he always felt if they ever reproduce, that child would be like the strongest ever, right? And of course, Cable is Cable, and we'll get a little bit more into his character a little bit later. But he created Madeline Pryor strictly for that purpose. And the cartoon actually, they go there with, you find out that Madeline Pryor, that they follow that story arc. So in the cartoon, you find basically, they switch it up a little bit. So instead of Cyclops, leaving the X-Men, finding, Madeline Pryor, hooking up with her, having a baby by her, he actually felt that Jean was never swapped. Like, Jean was Jean the whole time. So he never leaves Jean. So that whole time, apparently, somewhere in the interim of the series, somehow Mr. Sinister got a hold of Jean Grey and swapped her out with the clone. So Jean was never left for dead to begin with, and Sinister basically did a swap somewhere. Now, where he did that, I have no clue. I don't know when he got her. It could have been, because in the series, Sinister was heavily involved in the OG 90 series. So it could have been a time where maybe the Savage Land arc, where he kidnapped Cyclops and Jean right after their wedding. And just basically somewhere in between at times, they weren't always conscious. So there could have been a time where maybe Cyclops was left unconscious and he did the swap there. I have no clue. It could have been any time. I don't know. I don't know when Sinister did it, but they kind of retconned the cartoon a little bit because you never got any indication that Jean was a clone. But nonetheless, it was cool how they did it. I'm not mad at it. I'm just pointing out the differences in the story. So at the end of the second episode, I believe, the real Jean somehow escapes Mr. Sinister and goes to the X-Mansion, and you find out, and Cyclops is with, who we still up to this point believed to be the real Jean Grey, and now you're seeing this clone, and you're just like, whoa, okay, so they are gonna go the Madeline Pryor route. Because I was like, and I knew it, because I was like, when I saw she was pregnant, I was like, there's no way. She is not Jean Grey. And, come to find out, she wasn't, she was a clone. So what does that mean? So in the comics, going back, how Cyclops eventually finds out that Jean Grey is still alive. And once he gets that call, and this is one thing I think the cartoon did a better job of how they handle Cyclops' character, because in the show, Cyclops didn't know, right? So he really thought the whole time that Jean Grey was who she was. But even though he finds out that who he was messing with wasn't the real Jean Grey, he didn't just abandon his son. Like, he still wanted to have an involvement with his baby. In the comic books, however, I'm gonna keep it a bean. Cyclops was kind of like, uncharacteristically of him, was not a good dad. Like, he just was straight up, I'm out the door. So what I mean by that is, once like Madelyne Pryor had the baby, he gets a call from his teammates, or his old teammates in the X-Men, to let him know that Jean is alive. And basically, once Cyclops finds out Jean is alive, it's like my man just gets amnesia and forgets he got a whole family at home and just pieces out. Like, legit just leaves Madelyne Pryor with Nathaniel Summers and just goes back to Jean. Like, straight like that. Like, he has no involvement with raising, like, Cable. And it was just like, yo, you just straight up left your wife and kid. Like, yo, what was up with that? Yo, my guy, like, you're still a father. I get that you may not want to be with her anymore, but you're still a father. And it was just not a good look for Cyclops. Like, I don't know what they were thinking when they wrote that in the comics, or what Claremont was thinking at that time, but that wasn't a good look for your boy. So I like how they kind of cleaned it up here, because it's more of a conflict with, now that I know that I thought I was messing with Jean, but I really wasn't. I had a baby by who I thought was Jean. And I think it actually made it more interesting for Cyclops' character, because he was really torn. And I like how they played on that. They didn't rush it. I felt like they showed the turmoil he was facing with, whether to be with who, like, the real Jean, who he was in love with. He married her. Like, that's who he thought he was with, versus, like, Madelyne Pryor, who basically looks like Jean, talks like Jean, walks like Jean, thinks like Jean, similar memories to Jean. I really love that inner conflict. Even with the, when Jean caught kind of like Cyclops, like, having a mental connection with Madelyne Pryor, and how she got upset with that, and was just like, yo, like, why are you I thought, like, why are you creeping around on me? Like, you doing this whole mind thing. Like, and I thought that was even interesting. And they got that actually from the comic books, because in the comic books, Cyclops actually had a relationship with the White Queen, who was a part of the Hellfire Club. And the White Queen being Emma Frost, who is also a telepath, who is almost as powerful as Jean Grey in certain aspects. And basically, Cyclops was kind of creeping around on Jean, like, low-key. Like, he was messing with White Queen. He ended up with her, and they stayed together for the longest time. And I actually felt that, to be honest with you, I low-key kind of like that relationship he had with Emma Frost more than I did with Jean, because I felt like it added another layer to Cyclops. And yeah, it made him a darker character. And those times, like that whole Krakoa age, I know a lot of people don't really rock with that version of Cyclops, but I was loving it. I was like, man, it made Cyclops was like legit, like, I'm about to run this. Like, he was turning into Magneto straight up. Like, I love that version of Cyclops. I was tight. But anyway, though, they kind of got that from that comic, where he was kind of having like a telepathic romance, low-key, with the Emma Frost, and Jean called him, whatever. But Jean wasn't no saint either, because once she found out that Cyclops had been messing around with another clone, she kind of like was wanting to kind of low-key get her revenge back and she did. And this is so petty. This was so petty. She tried to go get Wolverine, yo, to try to, like, you know what I'm saying, like, on some, like, my man straight up had a baby with another chick type stuff who looked like me, but I'm still mad anyway. So I'm just gonna go get even, just because, and just so I can hold it over his head, so he knows how I felt, when I caught him with her, type of thing. And yo, like she was straight up trying to play on my man emotions. Like I wasn't liking that. I wasn't liking that. That wasn't a good look. I don't liking that, Gene. That wasn't cool. That was not cool in the streets. That was not cool in the streets. But you know what? My man Wolverine, my man Josh Howlett, my man Logan, he handled that like a G. He was like, I don't want it like that. I don't want it like that. He was like, of course I got feelings for you, but I don't want it like that. I don't want it like that. That ain't cool. That ain't how we get down. That ain't how we get down. So I thought that was shout out to Logan, man. Like Wolverine handled that like a G, man. He's like, nah, man, I don't want it like that. I want you straight up. I want it straight up. So I respect that. I respect that. And early on, though, they can't put my man Wolverine in some messed up situations, though, man. Yo, tell me why on the second episode where Jean is about to have the baby, and all of them are at like the mutants and stuff are at a press conference, and basically like Wolverine is left with Jean while she's pregnant, and then she goes into labor. Why you would leave Wolverine with Jean? Out of all people you could have left Storm. Which if you left Storm, it probably would have been better for her character, because we'll get into that a little bit later too, because she ends up getting kind of done dirty early on. But it was a great character arc for her. You could have left Rogue. You could have left Jubilee. Somebody who understands the female anatomy, because I don't know, man. Like even Beast would have made sense. If you were talking about a guy, Beast would have made sense, because at least he's like a scientist. He would have been able to fit. Wolverine. So, oh my God, when Jean goes into labor, I felt so bad for my man Wolverine, man. I was like, oh my God, Wolverine was looking so lost out there, man. He was looking so lost. He was just like, it was funny because she was like, Logan, and he was like, what's going on? Apocalypse? Is it Apocalypse? Like, he's like, oh, all right, like, let's go. I'm ready to set off. Is it Apocalypse? Is it, who is it? I'm ready to fight. Like, Sabretooth? Who? Tell me what's going on. I'm about to have a baby. And Wolverine like, baby? It's like his mind went from battle ready to like nerd. So I was like, man, they did my man Wolverine so dirty on that. But he got to the hospital, and I did like how when they got to the hospital, you can see the oppression though. Like on a serious note, you can see the oppression of humans and mutants. Like the doctor was really feeling uncomfortable even delivering the baby, which is kind of messed up, right? But it was cool how Rogue was able to. I like that aspect. They kind of showed like her powers are more than just absorbing people's powers. She can absorb knowledge. So she actually absorbed like the doctor, his knowledge of how to deliver the baby, which I thought was so dope. So that was a really cool moment, I think, for her character. And it just kind of showed like it was a little moment, but it was a cool moment because it kind of showed like her range with her ability. Now, as it relates to that dynamic between Jean, Cyclops, and Madeline Pryor, you got this whole love triangle going on. And essentially in the comics, you get an arc that kind of stems from that because, of course, like I said, Cyclops in the comics leaves, Nathaniel with Madeline Pryor, and then Madeline Pryor ends up becoming like the Demon Queen, or the Goblin Queen, excuse me. And you get this whole arc called Inferno, which basically, is a whole nother thing. But in the cartoon, they kind of brought some of that there. And that's when I was like, yo, that's kind of interesting. I didn't think they were going to go there because, we talked a lot about wanting to bring darker characters into Disney. Like we talked about wanting to bring Ghost Rider in, wanting to bring Blade in, wanting them to bring like Werewolf by Night, which they did, wanting them to bring Mephisto. But we always were concerned like if they would even go to Mephisto route because he's just too dark of a character. And I don't know if Disney would really rock with it, seeing as how their target demographic is kids. But interestingly enough, X-Men went there. They brought like demons and stuff to X-Men. And I thought that episode that they did where Madeline Pryor became the Goblin Queen, she's wearing the all black, and she's rising. She's working with Sinister at this point because Sinister has gotten her head and, has corrupted her. And she's bringing and she's just basically a woman scorned at this point. And she's like having these goblins attack the X-Mansion, and the X-Men are trying to fight off these goblins. And you get a really cool scene with Bishop, which I believe it was like Gambit actually charged up Bishop to use his, like, because, you know, Bishop has the ability to absorb energy, and anything he absorbs, he uses that amount back at you. Now, there is a limit to what he can absorb, but he can unload a lot. And when he unloaded, man, he wiped out a whole bunch of those goblin hordes. So it was really tight to see that, you know, him just kind of like the Bishop get his just due. And that was the cool thing about the series. Everybody had their moments. Everybody had their moments, and we'll get in a little bit more into Bishop's arc too, because I'm going to take my time with this. This is actually going to be maybe a 3-4 part series that I'm going to do on X-Men 97. I'm going to really break this down. But getting back to Jean, Cyclops, Madeline Pryor, that whole triangle was really cool. And I even like the fight between that she had with Magneto. That was an interesting fight too. Like, they were going at it. Like, because, you know, at this point Magneto's still leading, and they're having their battle, and they're going at it, man. And it was so dope. So that was a really cool fight. But the interesting part in what you find out, and the big piece that, you know, comes from that particular story, is once the battle is over and Madeline Pryor realizes, okay, she's being duped and she's being manipulated by Sinister. Yeah, she's not the real Jean. Yeah, she's who she is. She basically, you know, calms down. Of course, she, you know, they offer her to stay, but it just wouldn't be right. I mean, at this point, Cyclops is rolling with Jean because she's the real Jean, and that's where his heart's at. Madeline Pryor, you know, she has the baby, but at this point, the baby got kidnapped by Sinister and gets infected with the techno-organic virus. Now, to give you more context on that, the techno-organic virus is a virus that Sinister created for Apocalypse, because in the comics, Cable was like basically prophesized to be the Messiah or the downfall of Apocalypse. Now, Apocalypse, you know, for those of you guys who don't know, is an Egyptian, a mutant that dates back to the Egyptian era, and basically is considered at this point to be one of the oldest, if not the oldest mutant in existence. He basically finds celestial tech. The Celestials were, you know, if you ever seen the Eternals, that big Celestial that created the Eternals, that's the Celestials. Apocalypse is granted their celestial armor and technology and was able to travel through time and basically take over the future. And that's where Cable was born into a future where Apocalypse basically runs it, and it gets really convoluted and complicated. But long story short, all you need to know: Apocalypse is a mutant that basically is OP as hell. He has a lot of celestial technology. He's running in the future. He pretty much reigns supreme, and his only threat is a baby by the name of Nathaniel Summers. So to neutralize the threat, he created a techno-organic virus. Or had Sinister create a techno-organic virus, infect Nathaniel Summers with it to basically neutralize his abilities and his powers. Now, what does that mean? So basically, Cable has the best of both worlds. He has basically telekinesis. He's telekinesis. He's a telepath. He has energy projection like his father. Like, he's like OP as hell. And really, if it wasn't for the techno-organic virus, he could use the full potency of his power. The problem is that the techno-organic virus, if you ever see Cable, his arm is metal. It's a silver metallic metal. And that's the virus. And basically, the virus is feeding at his flesh. And the goal of the virus is to make him like a robot, essentially, that basically works for Apocalypse. He becomes a mindless zombie working for Apocalypse. To keep the virus from spreading, Cable has to use his telekinetic ability to suppress the virus and keep it at bay, or at least slow it down or neutralize it. But because he's using so much power and he constantly has to keep it at bay, he's never really able to cut loose. If he were able to do that, he would be a problem. And a great example of that would be X-Man. If you ever get a chance, read the comic book X-Men. So X-M-A-N, X-Man. And basically, that is Nathaniel Summers in an alternate reality without being inhibited by the techno-organic virus. You really get to see how powerful this guy is. And he's really probably beyond Omega level in terms of his ability. Now, in the cartoon, Sinister does kidnap the baby, and he does infect him with the techno-organic virus. And because he got, but the X-Men do get there to Sinister's lab to stop him from kidnapping the baby. They rescue Nathaniel. Unfortunately, Nathaniel is infected by the virus at this point. And because the virus is so bad, there's no treatment for it in their timeline. So Bishop, at this point, offers to take Cable or Nathaniel or Baby Nathan, whatever you want to call him, to his future to basically find a cure to get rid of the virus. Now, who's he going to see? Well, speculation will lead you to believe, and you'll find out later, that it will be the character of Forge. Forge is basically, and I love how comics explained it the best. I think he said it best. Forge is the mutant version of Tony Stark. He can basically, his mutant ability is to be able to fix anything or tinker with anything or, create anything. Technology-wise, he's always like forward thinking. So Bishop's thinking was, I could take Cable there or Nathan there to get seen by Forge, who could then possibly, cure the virus and maybe even send him back. Of course, Cyclops and Jean weren't really happy, or Madeline Pryor weren't happy about it, but they needed to save the baby. So that was a great and smart way of, getting Nathan out of the storyline so he doesn't become so inhibited, or they have to kind of rehash that storyline. But it's a productive way to use him later, because we're going to get Cable later. We get Cable later in the season, and that whole connection finally gets tied in. So with that being said, though, guys, we're going to end this particular video as part 1 for X-Men 97. The second part we're going to go over is the middle part. And oh my God, there's a lot to talk about it. Now, there's a lot of things that goes on in that middle arc that I'm going to cover. There's still characters that we're going to further explore. Now, also, one thing I did leave out that was important, that another major key piece that does happen, because we talked about the triangle between Gambit, Magneto, and Rogue. We talked about the triangle with Cyclops, Madeline Pryor, and Jean. We didn't talk too much. We talked about Moore for his cameos. He really doesn't have a lot going on early on. Wolverine doesn't either, aside from the situation with Jean. Beast doesn't really have a lot going on. He's pretty much just kind of a background character. He has a cool moment with the mech suit and the robot, but nothing specific early on in the series. Storm, however, I almost forgot. Storm had an important character arc. So, real quick, during episode 2, Storm actually is with Magneto at a press conference to try to basically have a peace conference or a treaty between mutants and humans. Magneto is on trial at this point, and because he's trying to turn over a new leaf, he turns himself in to the authorities and throws himself at the mercy of the court, because he'd already read, because he's now leading the X-Men, he's really trying to earn their trust. And of course, the X-Men don't trust Magneto. His whole thing has been to try to wipe out humankind. Mutants are the superior race. We should be running this, like all that. So X-Men are reluctantly follow Magneto, but they don't trust him. They don't really rock with a lot of his viewpoints. So to show and prove and really prove himself as that he's turned over a new leaf, and he's really trying to embody what Professor Xavier's vision and dream was, he decided to throw himself at the mercy of the court. And it's really based off of I forgot the issue, but you can look it up. It's called The Trial of Magneto, and it's that famous cover where he's standing, with his new costume, which I really don't like. It's that purplish black costume he wears that has the big M on it, and he doesn't have the helmet, and he's like, kind of like chained up. And I just never been a big fan of that. I don't really like that costume. That's not the Magneto I want. I want Magneto in that red and purple with the helmet, or even his new costume that he wore during the Krakoa Art Resort, where he had the all white, that was clean. But I'm not really a big fan of that other one. I'm just not. But Anyway, Magneto does. They do have the conference, and Magneto's on trial. Of course, he's being ridiculed, and they're not trusting him. And really, Magneto don't have to take that. I mean, Magneto can, with a snap of a finger, could just destroy all of those guys. But then we get a cool scene by a character in the X-Men mythos by the name of the Executioner. He's just a human or a rebel guy who's leading a faction that hates mutants, and he goes in there with some Sentinel tech, and he also has a mutant neutralizer that basically takes the abilities of mutants. And I mean, you kind of saw it on X-Men 3, The Last Stand, which was a god-awful movie, but where where the mutants were getting hit and losing, hit with basically cures to cure them of their mutant abilities. They would lose their powers. Kind of the same concept with this particular tech that Executioner had. So he's going to shoot Magneto, which at this point, Magneto is the leader. And to be honest with you, Magneto is really kind of like that bridge, honestly, at this point between all mutants. Because he has the respect of, the Brotherhood, those, the Morlocks, all these mutants that really have rolled with Magneto, that really believed in that more aggressive approach. But he's also trying to earn the respect. He also had the respect of Charles Xavier. And I felt like Magneto had that real backing. So if you take his powers, that would have really been a huge blow to the mutant community because of what he symbolized, right? So knowing what the stakes were, and as powerful of a mutant as she is, perhaps you can even argue more powerful than Magneto, Storm took the blow for Magneto when she got hit with one of the mutant cures, and basically lost her powers. So I mean, that was an important piece that happened in the first act of the season that I really wanted to point out. Now, because of that, Storm is powerless. She no longer has her mutant abilities. So because of that, Storm had to go on a journey, and she basically left the X-Men to basically find herself and figure out where does she go from here. So you last see her getting on a bus and piecing out after episode 2. So that was a really key thing as well. And it was interesting too, because I liked how they did explore the dynamic before she left between her and Jean, because they really had a strong sisterhood. And she even kind of flirted with the, I wonder what life would be like if I didn't have my powers, which is kind of foreshadowing now that I'm looking back at it. And then for her to not have her powers and feel like that aspect of her has been taken away, you see a different Storm, a more vulnerable Storm, something that you're not used to seeing, because her powers exude confidence, and she's just always been a confident mutant, not just because of her. Well, I mean, a lot of it, her abilities are reflect her level of confidence, and now her abilities are gone. Who is she? So I always thought that was interesting, because people looked at Storm as a goddess, where she was from when she was first enlisted to join the X-Men. So just thought I'll point that out, because that was an important arc for her character. Other than that, none of the other characters really have a strong arc early on, which is fine, because you have a lot of characters, and we're gonna get there. And there's a lot of things that do progress. A lot of plots that are being interwoven and built up. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna end it here, and then we're going to part 2. And part 2 is gonna take us into the second act of season 1, X-Men 97. And boy, yo boy, does it get real and it get lit. And when I say it get real and it get lit, I'm not playing. Yo, X-Men 97, I'm going to go as far as to say, is the best thing Disney has put out, I'm going to say, in the past 2 years. Best thing it's got. I don't even think nothing's topping it this year. I don't even care, movies, whatever. Nothing's topping X-Men 97 this year. I'm going to put that out there right now. Straight like that. But with that being said, y'all, it's been real. It's been fun. It's your boy, The Clinician, and I am out. Peace.